I just, I was 180 degrees in the lane next to me, facing in the opposite direction. And I had an 18-wheeler coming right at me. And then time stopped again. And
Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. As always, I don't like to share anything about people's stories because I find that if they hear it from you yourself, they will learn so much more than if I just present it. So I'm going to hand over the floor to you. If you can just give us a little bit of a background about who is Anna, what happened in your life that led you to where you are at today.
sure. Thank you for having me, Natasha. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my story with you and all of your everyone watching your channel. So let's see where to begin. Um, I guess I could start as a child. I used to have frequent out-of-body experiences. I used to astral project almost every night. Probably every night, but I remember doing it, especially around the age of 8 years old. And I would wake up, but my body would stay asleep, and I would leave my body and I would like walk out of my house, but out through the garage door every night instead of through the front door for some reason. Um, and so I would run up my driveway and then I would just take off and I would fly all around the neighborhood. And I would go places like not just in this realm, but in the higher realms, like the heavenly realms. And I would be taken there by a spirit guide. And when I was young, it took the form of like a Pegasus, an angelic horse, a winged horse. And then as I got older, I would have different guides show up. And depending on where, it was like I was learning in my sleep. I would be going to like in my physical world, like when I was in my 20s and I was going to the university, I wasn't just going to university in the physical world, I was also going in spirit. And so, um, yeah, I had back then as a child, I thought everybody had this experience, and I think we do. We just tend to brush it off, and perhaps sometimes it's more vivid than other times. And I think that when it is more vivid, and we actually become lucid in the dream and we learn how to control that dream, then there's like this bleeding over into the physical realm and they kind of merge. And so we're able to, because life is also a dream, we're able to become lucid in the dream of life. And so that's what I've learned through the years, through my own experiences, traveling to different realms, into the higher realms and the lower realms of the astral plane, what we call heaven and hell. And then also in my adult life, working with psychedelics, working with meditation, and lucid dreaming, continuing that lifelong process. Yeah, so the physical plane is but a tiny portion of the reality of existence. And even physicists now know that this is a simulation. And what cultures all over the world have known for thousands of years, science is now agreeing with. And so I have, since my awakening back in 2013, I've had like this thirst for knowledge, for consciousness. I'm all about the evolution of consciousness. I've come to understand that consciousness is all there is. Everything is conscious, and everything is God experiencing itself with different levels of consciousness. And love is consciousness self-realized. And so going back to when I guess I'm I'm currently a registered nurse, certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and I became all of these things. Like everything that I experienced in my life has prepared me for what I do now. And some of it was traumatic. I've had 3 near-death experiences, all in the form of vehicular accidents. Um, so the first one happened back in, I think it was 2016. No, when was it? Earlier than that. Yeah. So I lose track. But the first one happened when I was still in college the first time. I was studying to be an anthropologist, and I had an out-of-body experience, like time stood still as well in that accident. It was a 4-car collision. I was the first car hit from behind. Um, Before the actual impact, that's when time stopped for me. And I was able to see 360 degrees all around me. It was like my consciousness was in 2 places at once. It was in my body and then also outside of my body. That I was able to see the entire area all around. And I knew that the vehicle was not going to be able to stop. And it was a SUV coming full speed. And so right before impact, I just, I was 180 degrees in the lane next to me, facing in the opposite direction. And I had an 18-wheeler coming right at me. And then time stopped again. And so in that moment when the time stood still, not only was I able to like see everything in this realm, in the physical taste of the eternal now moment, and it's kind of like streams into different like future potentials for myself and for humanity. And then I think that each one of these accidents were like a further awakening for myself. And also they were pre-planned and not necessary, except for the fact that I was stubborn. And it was kind of like getting me back onto the path, onto to what I came here for. And so, yeah, that first accident, it was the worst as far as like physical trauma, but it was all like looking back at it, it was just divinely orchestrated. The ambulance, the paramedics were already there because all they had to do was just hop over the concrete median to get to me. And yeah, and it was like minimally invasive, the healing process, and it wasn't even painful. It wasn't just due to shock, but in the weeks afterwards, the healing process, I had no pain. It was amazing. It was just, yeah, and so back then I didn't realize, I thought it was just luck. You know, I didn't see it as good or bad. I just thought it was like, oh, wow, that was interesting, you know, and then years went by. I got married, I had kids, um, moved overseas, spent a few years in the Middle East in Dubai. Um, and then that's where I had my second accident. I was not the driver, I was the passenger. My husband, my now ex-husband, was the driver. And we were in the middle of the desert, just driving quite fast. There's no real speed limits are not enforced in Dubai. And so it was nighttime. We were driving quite fast and it was very foggy because Dubai is where the ocean meets the desert, the Persian Gulf. So at night it gets very foggy sometimes. And so we ended up hitting a roundabout on the highway, going full speed. And so in that instant, right before we hit, time stood still. And I like thought this prayer, and I didn't really realize it was a prayer, but it was just like an asking, like, please, no, not now, the children. And so I knew I saw in that moment of stillness, I saw how they would not be okay, how their lives would be drastically negatively affected had my husband and I been um, physically maimed or our lives ended at that time. And so we ended up, it was like teleporting, I guess. We ended up going through these pillars, these metal pillars that were holding up a highway sign. And instead of hitting or going through that, we were on the other side and we impacted the sand, this big sand dune, and the car was like buried halfway into the sand, and the airbags went off and everything. And I still, when the airbags went off, it was like time, it was very slow motion. I could see the airbag go off. I could see and smell all of the little particles of gunpowder that they use to explode the airbag. And then when we made impact, I could like feel the bag, and then I saw it deflating. As soon as it was almost totally deflated, it was like time started again. And I came up and it was daylight. And so in the period of impact and coming up, it became sunrise. So there was definitely a time warp in that moment. And when everything came back to normal, I climbed out of the vehicle. I asked my husband, "Are you okay?" And he asked the same thing. Yes, we were fine. Later on, all I had was a bruise from the seatbelt. Never lost consciousness to our knowledge. And we had my first acknowledgement, my first awareness of an angel incarnate. And this was a man who showed up. He was wearing all white, which is also their traditional garb for the men in Dubai. And he gave us 2 ice-cold bottles of water. And then he left. And, we didn't have a conversation. He may have asked, "Are you okay?" as well, but I honestly don't remember. And so we had that cold water. It was very refreshing. It tasted like the best water I've ever had. And, looking back on it all, it's just there's no coincidences. It's all synchronicities. It's all divine orchestration. What are the odds of he being there right at that moment at sunrise in the middle of the desert with 2 ice-cold bottles of water? And it was just like perfect, absolutely perfect. And so, yeah, that happened when my kids were like 3 and 5 years old. So that was around like 2007, I think that was. And then, yeah, so it's been a while. My kids are now in their 20s. And so after that is when I started having like real awakening. I started having symptoms of what people call ascension symptoms, and I became extremely sensitive to energy around me and to that of like the people and the place. I could no longer go into like malls or movie theaters. Even grocery shopping became a challenge for me because I was just inundated with everybody else's feelings and thoughts, and emotions, and I didn't know what is going on. What is this? I had a panic attack twice where I actually had the paramedics come because I thought I was having a heart attack. And it wasn't. It was just my sudden, all my clairsentient having access to that. And that just like that being the boundaries, the barriers being blown away. And so my nervous system was learning how to deal with all of that stimulation. And and so, yeah, it took a couple of years to deal with that, to learn what I had nobody, no spiritual teacher at the time. And so I just thought it was a physical issue. Like I went and had a heart MRI done, and I went, they even gave me like Xanax I took one dose, and that was it. I was like, nope, never again, never again. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of my journey. Uh, it was kind of like kicking and screaming because I wanted everything to stay the same, and it was not meant to be. And so, um, in the meantime, I was dealing with a husband with PTSD, who he had actually had it since he was a teenager. He grew up in El Salvador during the Civil War. And so he had some untreated trauma. And then when we were in the Middle East, he was working as a government contractor in Afghanistan. And he experienced more, it worsened his PTSD. And so, yeah, we came back. We ended up leaving the Middle East, coming back to the United States. And, as life goes, his mental illness progressively got worse. And I, being the healer that I am, was trying to heal him myself, and being able to learn all of these modalities like Reiki, energy healing, like hypnotherapy, past life regression, breath work, all these different modalities. I was able to heal like my animals. Like we had some rescue animals and cows and dogs, and miraculous experiences healing them because they were receptive to it. My husband was not. And so, yeah, after a 20-year marriage, it ended. I had my full-blown awakening in 2013, and that is when I was taken in the astral plane by a spirit guide to a higher realm that and we had there was a meeting there. There were thousands of people there, thousands of other light beings. You may have been one of them. I think that all the light workers now were at that meeting. And when we arrived, so the person the guide, my spirit guide, she was a Native American woman who I still have no conscious memory of ever meeting before. But when she came to me, it was like a heart connection. There was something in me that recognized her as if she were my sister. And I could feel her warmth and her love, and it was emanating from me as well. And so she took me to that place, and it looks a lot. I think that in the astral plane, it was in the same area where Yellowstone is now. The Royal Teton, it's known as the Royal Teton Retreat area, where the mountains are, and the Yellowstone River. And so there was this clearing there, and we ended up landing in the clearing. And in that clearing, there were the thousands of other light workers there, and they were all on either side of this table, and it was like a conference table, but it went out as far as the eye could see. I could not see the end of it. And on it, there were images. It was like a big, like a giant iPad, and these images were being projected so that everybody there could see. They were being shown like what we were there for, it was all events that were happening and were soon to happen. It was like the timeline that we were on. And so As we landed there, I could see over the shoulder of the three individuals who were closest to me. And so I saw the three images, one in front of each. And the first image that I saw was wildfires. And in that state, you get a lot more information. You receive so much more information. It's like you know things just by being in the presence of someone. And so I knew that they were all over the planet. I knew that they were not necessarily all at the same time, but that they could be. And then I knew that that was like the current timeline, that our trajectory that we were on. And so later on in the years to come, we had all of these these historical wildfires, right? In the Amazon, in Australia, in Canada, in California, in Texas, all over the world, we've had all of these historical wildfires since then. And then it was not a surprise to me. I was like, okay, this is where we're at. It's happening. It's happening now. And so the second image that I was shown was just human strife, and particularly in the Middle East. And it was children being pulled out of concrete rubble and concrete dust. And back then I knew that it had to do something with Israel. I didn't know what Gaza was at the time, but it had to do with that. And I knew that it was getting closer to like my now moment, whatever I was experiencing. So in the linear frame of time, it was getting closer, even though everything is now, right? And
Yeah.
so the final image that I saw, it was actually one that was going between, like fading back and forth between two different images. One was pretty apocalyptic, like destruction, and the other one was heaven on earth. It looked like Eden-like. And so at the time I was like, what? How is that? How does that work? I didn't understand how it could be both at the same time. And is it one or the other? Or is it one before the other? Like, what is that? And so what I came to realize afterwards is that, yes, it is both. It is all of those things. It has actually already happened. Like what we call Earth, what we are experiencing now is just a shadow. We are here to heal this timeline. We are literally time travelers who have come incarnated now at this time so that this does not repeat itself. And this is how we achieve self-mastery, through perceived limitation. This is how, believe it or not, we play and we have fun. This is like a game, And so so as but at the time when I was there, I just found it like, oh, wow, this is like amazing. Like this information is amazing. And I was a little bit disappointed. I was like, oh, okay, so this is what what we have, okay, so this is what we're dealing with basically. And then, but other than that, it was not it didn't bring up a lot of emotion, And so that all happened very quickly as we were landing. And then shortly afterwards, this being came down in front of me, and we were all there waiting for him. And he was like materializing as he was descending. And he is the most beautiful man I have ever encountered. Very handsome, and yet he was dressed all in white, and yet he was very businesslike, very serious. And it was like we knew we were there to do business, to talk about to make plans to prepare, basically. And so what I have come to understand since then is that I knew there was something in me that recognized his authority, and I knew that he was at least thousands, if not millions of years old. I didn't know what his name was. I didn't know anything other than that. I had no previous spiritual practice at all. And to my knowledge, I mean, we've been working in our astral bodies for decades, and so he was either an archangel or an ascended master. It could be both. He's just so angelic. And so after that, I saw more visions of the future, and they all had to do with the alternate reality, like the solution to that problem which we were shown, which was like the problem that we needed to solve. And that was what is happening right now with the aurora borealis. And so it has to do with the evolution of consciousness being cyclical. And it actually, so it's connected directly to the solar activity as well as the electromagnetic field of the planet and the polar shift, and it all happening at the same time. And so what I saw is that it's not a physical shift of the poles, it is an electromagnetic shift. And as that is happening, the field is weakening and allowing more penetration of the sun's energy. And so everything is conscious. The earth, she is like an archangel herself. She is evolving. This is an opportunity for all of us to do so with her. And the cyclical nature of this is also in many cultures. So in the Hindu tradition, it's known as the yugas, the change from Kali Yuga to Sat Yuga. And in like Christian tradition, it's the return of Christ and the second coming. In Mesoamerican tradition, it's known as Quetzalcoatl, the return of the feathered serpent who brings knowledge and wisdom to humanity. In Aboriginal tradition, it's the rainbow serpent, the creator. And in European tradition, it's known as the Ouroboros, the serpent that is eating its own tail, showing the cyclical nature of the evolution of consciousness. And so it's just the collective consciousness that being given an opportunity to make an evolutionary leap in consciousness right now. It's like an end of karma. And so what it looks like is everything is going to be pretty chaotic, and it's already started. I mean, it's just exponentially increasing since, the pandemic and everything, and wars and climate change and all that. But it's going to be okay. It really is. We just have to keep connecting to love and realizing that we are immortal. We're just pretending to be mortal right now, and everything's going to be okay no matter what. But this is what change looks like. This is what the evolution of consciousness looks like. And so we don't need to suffer in order for things to get better. But unfortunately, humans don't tend to change unless they are uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So that's what all of this, like the solar energy is coming in and raising, giving the opportunity for those who are willing to match that resonance. And so it is literally increasing our connection to source. The sun is like a portal. And so as we're moving through space, not just the sun, but the entire galaxy, is coming into this area of the cosmos where we are more aligned with the great central sun or source, the heart of God. So yeah, that's where we're at now. But let's see. I guess I could talk about my experience of union with God. If that's, I think,
I'd
my
love to
most,
hear, but first I want to ask a few questions.
of course, go ahead.
So, okay, let's just go back to the beginning. So, you say when you were a child, you were just walking out the back door. Was it a physical experience, or was it just an awareness that you are doing it like a lucid dream, or did you actually feel 100% present in your body there?
So I could feel things, like I could feel momentum and acceleration and like wind. I could feel, like the energy within myself when I would run and jump and start flying around. I could literally feel when I came into contact with any other being in that state as if it was physical. Like I had one grab my arm with, like intertwine, and I could feel that. And depending on different levels of the astral plane, I had more form, and sometimes I was more energy. So sometimes it was like I only had like my head and torso, and then the rest was just like energy. Like I didn't have a lower body. It was just energy, like a spiral.
Yeah,
And sometimes I was like fully in form, in like just like this body, but I could fly. I could, I didn't have to breathe, so I could go underwater. I could go into space. I was limitless basically. The only thing limiting me was my own resonance, my own vibration. So that's why I don't think I was able to go into the higher realms without someone, without a guide,
yeah.
which is why I can go anywhere, pretty much anywhere. And so it's pretty much how it is here now, except it's a bit more dense here, more concentrated here.
Hmm.
Everything is made out of light. Right? We're all light. And so this is just a much more dense form of it.
So, if people, I know that like when you're asleep, a lot of people do leave their bodies and they don't remember it. But are there some people that like struggle to leave, that they're so earthbound and so dense that they're actually lost that connection almost, that ability that, or out of fear maybe, is that a thing?
Absolutely, yeah. So for most of my marriage, I don't have any conscious recollection of astral traveling, of lucid dreaming. I would, because I was totally focused on being a mother, right? I was a mother, full-time housewife. I was not focusing on me. I actually kind of lost myself, right? I was in a narcissistic relationship. I was just trying to survive. And so when you're in that state of just trying to survive, it can be more difficult to to have the conscious awareness. You're just honestly like exhausted, too
Yeah,
exhausted. And so,
yeah,
but again, if you have enough trauma, that can also launch you into that state as well,
yeah.
right? So
So on that
um
on that note, if you're in a narcissistic relationship, because I work with people, I've also was in a few of them, but I work with ladies specifically who have left toxic relationships. But I know that there's a spiritual warfare going on, and it's like a battle for the souls at this stage. And my question is, are they not sucking your energy dry
yeah.
so that you can't do those things? It's not just you getting trapped on the earth plane by them physically, but also spiritually. And if they're doing it, are they aware of doing it, or are some of them aware of doing it?
I would think that most are not aware of doing it, but it is happening. It is vampirical, and they're
Yeah,
literally feeding off of you. And I think that the entities that they're housing are just using them for
yeah,
that purpose. And so when you have addiction, you tend to be a magnet for those entities, right? And
Yeah.
so very often, like when people black out and they continue to function, they just have no memory of it afterwards, it's because they were not in control. And so this happened quite often. With my ex-husband, he would drink and then he would forget. He wouldn't pass out, but he would black out like he was no longer in charge. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it was. So what happens is that I had no spiritual awareness, no understanding. I was trying to fix him, when in reality, you can't fix anybody. You can't fix anybody, especially they have to do the work. They are the ones who have to do the work. So as soon as I realized that, I gave up. I started just focusing on myself, working on myself, healing myself, and anyone else who did want help, right? And so as soon as I started doing that, 3 years later, our 20-year marriage was done. Because as soon as you start taking care of yourself, the narcissist can no longer feed off of you.
Yeah.
They have no use for you anymore.
Yeah.
And so,
And
yeah.
I see that on a global scale as well. I mean, if you pull away your energy from all these world leaders
Mhm.
and you stop allowing them to instill that fear in you, then they've got nothing to feed off. So they
Okay.
eventually will lose all that energy and all that momentum that they've been gaining. Yeah.
That is right. Yeah. So there is
Yeah.
like spiritual warfare. It's happening. I mean, I see it as like we all need to have our spiritual immune system. Just like germs, there's good and bad germs. There's ones that are working for us, probiotics. There's ones that are working against us. And so we're not alone in this, right? We have our angels, we have our guides, our soul family, our star family. Everybody is there to support us. And we just need to learn how to engage and how to, eventually you realize that you don't need to protect yourself. But until you get there, yeah, there's certain things that you need to do to protect yourself. And in the oneness,
Especially,
yeah,
yeah,
in oneness, there is no good and evil. There's like the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's just duality.
yeah,
Duality equals death. And so when you realize that we are all just everything is God experiencing itself, playing different roles in this divine orchestration, you may call it a epic, drama, tragedy, or comedy, whatever you want to call it. It's there, nothing can be destroyed, it can only be transformed. So no matter how horrible something may seem, eventually you'll resonate at a point where you no longer need to grow through suffering, right? And so if you're able to stay centered in that resonance, you offer everything else around you the opportunity to match that. And so it works both ways. So you are resonating this peace, this centeredness, this light, allowing everything around you to match that. And then also, everything is honestly a projection of you. So anytime we see something that does not look pleasant, we just need to look within ourselves and find out, dive deep. You can go in both directions. You can dive deep or you can expand infinitely in both directions. You'll get to the same place.
it's an interesting way of putting it, but you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
As without, so within.
That's right. Yeah.
So, when you talk about the game of life,
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes we would get really stuck in. I had a client who used to play golf, and she said all your emotions come out with golf. Like you see people losing it. And I think it's the same with life. You play this game and people get so embroiled in it and they take it so seriously. And
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's just about having that detachment and being able to realize that it can be fun, but you don't have to, you can always take yourself out of it if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's the key
yeah,
is to have compassion without attachment.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing
Mhm.
is, everybody, even those people that are injured, that are broken, I don't know if they're broken as much as they may be fractured. Like there's parts that are, there's gaps, they're schismed, you know. They need to get whole again themselves, but they still have that light in them somewhere, somehow. It just might take them a bit longer. So I've also noticed something else lately, and I don't know if it's just me and it's a projection of me, or if it's something that's really happening. The lighter that we're becoming and the more conscious people are becoming, I'm noticing that there's some people that are going the opposite direction. They actually seem to be going more unconscious. Is that a thing? Is that like part of this balancing act, or what is that? Because am I imagining it, or is it happening?
So yeah, it is happening. And so it is like a balancing act. So as you have more people rising in consciousness, rising in awareness, you have other people who choose not to. It's all a choice. And healing, you need to feel it to heal it. And so sometimes it's just too painful. And so they choose to go the other way. They choose to distract themselves or to numb themselves or to perpetuate their own trauma. They're not even aware of what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, this is a choice that we all have in every moment is to either, like, everyone on this planet has trauma. Like, I'm pretty sure you just being born here, that you have PTSD, and it's the separation from source, it's the illusion of separation. It's that great. It's so much more here on Earth than on any other planet. And I think that's why we have so much pain and suffering here. It's because we really do believe that it is me and other, that when in reality, everything is me, right? Everything. I am an aspect of you. You are an aspect of me. We are, everything literally is one. But we come here, and believe it or not, like the souls who incarnate here on earth are very evolved. We descend here in order to achieve self-mastery, right? This is literally like boot camp. It's like a spiritual gym. The gravity here is not just physical. It isn't everything. Everything holds weight, right? And so we like another we have free will here, and I see that like another definition of free will I call like the law of confusion. Free will is the law of confusion. And so why would, it gives you the opportunity to choose suffering or to choose, bliss. And so because we're here, we're kind of like children, toddlers running around, not knowing what they're doing, we get hurt. We sometimes run into traffic, we do stuff that if we weren't so confused, it would be obvious, right? And so that's what divine will. There's no veil.
Yeah.
With divine will, you just know what to do. So of course I'm not going to hurt you because that would hurt me, and this is what we're coming to right now. So yeah, it's going to look pretty chaotic for a while. There's this dichotomy that's just this polarity that's increasing, but eventually it's like going to snap, and then everyone's going to come back together again and realize, I mean, already the youth right now, I think, is more awake. It's creating more. They don't want war. They don't want, they want water that they can drink. They don't want, endangered species to go extinct. They care, right? And hopefully that will just continue. And so I think
Mm.
are you familiar with the 100th monkey effect? The
Yeah.
100th monkey effect. So that's a thing. It's scientifically proven and it's going to happen. And so, getting there is going to be a little bit chaotic. It's just like changing frequencies on a radio station. In between stations, it's always chaotic, right? When
Yeah.
you hear all of that static. So that's where we're now. We're in between stations, you know, and so yeah, it's going to
It
be.
feels like the calm before the storm, actually.
I suppose, yeah, and so we are in a place where, like, as a collective consciousness, we may not be. Those of us who are more sensitive, we're tapped into that. We can sense that something is brewing, something is about to burst, something's going to come up, and it's already popping up. That's what's already happening right now. And just remember that everything that we have already experienced is preparing us for what is to come. How to deal with it, and it'll be easier to deal with, even though it'll still and life changing. We keep wanting to go back to where we were, for example, pre-pandemic. It's never going to happen. That's not going to
No
happen.
ways. No ways.
No. And so just know that, the plan, God's plan is heaven on earth. It's going to happen. And so what is it going to take to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually find that a lot of, well, if you call them light workers, if you want, they were in narcissistic relationships. And I think that's part of the plan, is that you're able to recognize your own self-worth, that you're able to say, I'm not feeding my energy to something that's not going to do anything positive with it. I know where to put it, where it counts, where not to place it, and what it looks like to have someone that you can trust and someone that you can't trust, and what it looks like, what real self-love looks like, because I think a lot of people are still stuck with self-love and selfishness, thinking it's the same thing. And actually, if you don't put yourself first, the whole system's going to go down.
Yes. Yeah. I had to learn that the hard way as a nurse. You need to take care of your body. You need to take care of this vessel, this body temple, because otherwise you're going to be useless here on earth.
Yeah.
You can pray, you can meditate. That's helpful. But if you want to do anything else, you need to take care of your body temple and
Yeah.
your mind. Yeah.
And part of being in trauma means you're going to get illnesses that are stress-based, that you have to get over yourself, because nobody else out there can fix it. I mean, all these so-called mystery diseases like fibromyalgia and MS and all these things, they are all stress responses. And if
That's
you're able
right.
to
Yeah.
heal that yourself, then you know that everything is possible and everything is able to be healed. So, Dolores Cannon talked about the earth splitting. Do you think in that iPad vision that you saw that it was kind of like that those people that are going up in consciousness are able to see the Eden, and those people that are dropping in consciousness are just going to see the 3D earth the way it's going at the moment? Or is Earth actually splitting, or is it just like a dimensional split? What do you think that is?
So I think that it's a dimensional split. So I don't think that, so I'll give you an example of what I actually experienced, something similar. I was in two worlds at the same time when I was working in the ICU during the pandemic. And so I was also a yoga teacher teaching breath work to hundreds of people. This was before the vaccination. This was without masks. And this was with a community who was not afraid of the pandemic. And so
Yeah.
we were doing breath work with hundreds of people. None of them were ever hospitalized. They actually were very healthy. And we were doing that at the same time. I was working in the ICU and, dealing with patients who were dying, even though they were triple vaccinated later on. Like my last patient was triple vaccinated and still passed because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, I ended up getting double vaccinated. I had to in order to keep my job. And yet, everyone who's vaccinated, everyone still got sick, right? All the nurses, they still got sick. And I did not. And my fellow nurses were like, I can't believe you haven't gotten sick, and I'm like, yeah, I do breath work, that's,
Yeah.
and so they it was like a short circuit. There was no receptivity at all. And
Yeah.
so they just thought it was crazy. They didn't even question further what that meant. So I was like, yeah, this is two totally different worlds. Whatever you believe is your reality. Belief becomes your reality. And so I was experiencing all this fear, having to gown up and disinfect and all this stuff between every room multiple times. And it was just all this fear-based reality. And then this totally mellow, spiritual, like just peaceful, no worries, no fear reality at the same time, you know? And I think
Yeah.
that's what it's going to be like. That separation, it's going to be like
That
that.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Just
Hmm.
where you choose to be at any given
Yes,
moment. Because I mean,
exactly.
if I even went near a hospital, especially during that time, the energy is so heavy and so dense and so fearful,
Hmm.
and I mean, there's still some repercussions from that now. And now, even there's people driving in their car with masks on by themselves. And I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see people
it,
like running around outside, like with a mask on. And I'm like, seriously? You're outside, but
it,
whatever they do to
it,
feel safe, right?
and that's what works for them. So, like you say,
Yeah.
that's the truth. So,
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you about the aurora. I know you mentioned it now, because that's just happened. We even
Hmm.
had an experience here in South Africa where there were
Oh,
lights
wow.
coming through, and I thought that's interesting because never in my life did I think it would be in the south of the world.
That's
Is that from the
amazing.
polar shifts or what? Because I know about a black sun, and I know that there's a black sun under the earth. I thought it had something to do with that, or is it totally unrelated?
So my understanding that it is due to the electromagnetic field of the Earth weakening. At the same time, we're having this increased solar activity, like all of
Yeah.
these solar storms, and it's going to keep increasing. It's going to get more powerful, and we
Yeah.
will see the aurora borealis all over the entire planet.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
That's going to be
yeah,
awesome.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's starting already. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And this
okay,
is
one
what
more question.
yeah, go ahead,
And
go
then I
ahead.
want to
I'm
hear
just
and then I
excited
want to
about
hear
it.
the rest of the story. So,
Sure.
when you went into the shops and you could hear people's thoughts and feel their feelings and that, like, I'm interested. Does it look like, there's that movie called Lucy, I think, where you see the numbers downloading above their heads? Is it something like that? But you see the thoughts? Is it like a stream or
So
what? How does it look?
at that time, that's not what it was. I was actually feeling it within me. I couldn't tell the difference. I thought it was me.
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't know who I was like, why am I was just overwhelmed and feeling the anxiety and just like I wasn't able to cope with so much stimulation. I felt almost like I was going to like have a seizure, a
Wow.
heart attack or a seizure. It was just overstimulation. That's what I felt like. And yeah, then looking back, I was, now I'm able to, oh, I sense something here. This person is having a hard time. I'm going to send them love instead of trying to feel everything for them. Right. And I was just doing that unintentionally, feeling everything for them, and you can't do that. I
Yes, so
can't
I
do
suppose
that.
it's like a muscle. You're going to learn how to control what information comes in,
Yeah.
take it, learn from it, and say, okay, I don't have to take it on. I just
Yeah.
recognize it.
That's
Okay.
right. So it's kind of like being a baby again. When you're a baby, you're just learning how to how to control your muscles and smacking yourself or doing things that just don't, are out of your control. So it was kind of like that, but energetically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Tell me the next part because you were going to share what happened after. You were
Sure.
going to.
Well, I think that I would like to share my most significant spiritually transformative experience, which was union with God, with the mind of God. And um, this happened after a shamanic ceremony, and I call it my 7 day samadhi because it happened over 7 days. And so every time I would close my eyes or fall asleep, I would experience the void, which Anna would disappear. The universe would disappear. Everything. I was just pure consciousness. I was this vast, eternal, just thought. That's all I was my thoughts. There was nothing. It was totally dark. It was totally neutral. Like there was no good or bad. There was just myself. That's all there was. And I knew, and I was in the eternal now moment. I knew that this was my most absolute, my most distilled self. I knew that I was everything that ever was and ever would be, that it was just all me. And then when I would wake up, when Anna would wake up and come back into form, it was from the inside out, like through my heart as particles of light. And this is how how Anna and the universe came into form for 6 days. On the seventh day, I was finally able to rest. But when I was trying to function during the day, it was excruciating. It was so difficult because I was my awareness it was hard to stay in the body. I had this feeling of separation that was just so powerful. The longing was so powerful. Like I wanted to be back together again. And it was, I realized that this was the Big Bang. Like the first thought that I had in the void was, what is this? Who am I? Who am I? And as soon as I had that thought, I experienced this explosion, this epic, heart-wrenching roar, but it was silent. And it was like the whole universe came into form. This is how the physical realm came into form. It was birthed from the heart of God. Everything is God experiencing itself. Like light, that literally is love. It is the heart of God, and everything is made out of it. And so, um, experiencing myself as Anna became so painful. Like that longing, it was almost too much for my physical body to bear. I just wanted to be together again so much that I was like, take me now. I would have happily died, you know, just take me now or just stop, end this all. And so it ended. I stopped feeling that longing as soon as I asked for it to stop the next day. It stopped. But I realized that, I am the light. I am the love of God, that everything is a projection of me, that, I could access that now whenever I want. Um, I can, the more I do it, the more easier it is to function from that state.
Yeah.
Since then, I've had other experiences of like the Big Bang, but they were not nearly as heart-wrenching or painful. They were actually blissful. They were actually like I wake up laughing, like giggling like a child with pure joy because it comes from not the thought of who am I, but let there be light. Like, what do I want to create? That's like, let's create, that's what happens now. And so I realized that eternity is a really long time and there's multiple eternities. The universe is expanding in on itself and then going back into itself like a torus, a toroidal field. So this is what's happening over trillions and billions of years. And so, each one of those is like a day to God, And so, yeah, so I was the void, I was the mind of God, and I could see God's thoughts when I was God. I could see God's thoughts, and they were like sacred geometry. They were like spirals, like paisley, and in motion. And those same motions, like afterwards, I spent, years and months studying, researching, like, what was this experience? What did I have? And I found out the Mandelbrot. Are you familiar with the Mandelbrot set?
No.
So it's basically mathematical proof of the mind of God. And
Oh,
so if
wow.
anybody wants to research the Mandelbrot set, that I saw, like I took a screenshot of what the thoughts look like, God's thoughts look like. It was in the Mandelbrot set. Exactly what I saw,
Wow.
except in motion. And so yeah, the void is literally the mind and the womb of God. And so the thoughts are like the seeds. And this is who we are as well. So our thoughts are literally seeds before they manifest. And so repetitive thought patterns like PTSD or anything, even just, Natasha, Anna, we are a thought in the mind of God. And so this is all just a stream. Life really is a dream because I woke up from the dream of Anna. I woke up from the dream of Anna and there was nothing but pure consciousness. Now I wake up from the dream of Anna, it's been, I don't know, maybe about half a dozen times since then where I am no longer in the void. I have like all of these universes that I created. I'm floating in them and like bubbles, right? I love bubbles and I never knew why. Like that mirror behind you, that reminds me of that. Like I'm surrounded by my own creation. And so with aspects of myself in each, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. We're all
Yeah.
Christ beings. We just need to remember who we are. We are all, yeah, amazing gods and goddesses.
Is that not the I am? That
Yes.
what that is? It's just who am I am. I am that I
Yeah.
am.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that is the name of God. I am. There's nothing that I am not.
Yeah.
Everything. I am everything. Everything in your awareness is you. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. No, I think was it David Hawkins who had that experience too, where he felt that absolute longing and he realized he is still here in the body. He's got a choice. Either let me go up there and ascend, or let me just come back to earth so that I can do my work here. But if I'm living in that space of longingness, you can't really function. It's like being in love 10 times over. You can't think
Yes.
straight. You can't function optimally. And at some point you realize you'll go there anyway, but right now you've got work to do. Is it something like that
That's
that
right.
happened?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's a reason why we forget because I don't think we would be able to function. and I think that as we continue to work on ourselves and become that,
Yeah.
then the longing goes away. As you become that love instead of having to find it outside of you, then it's just, I think that's why we're here. That's why we're here. We're creating heaven on earth by becoming that.
That makes total sense.
Mhm.
Because then you embrace it instead of rejecting it. You allow, and when you're in a state of allowing, everything works out. Everything you can create as well.
That's right. Yeah. So I've come to understand that when you're in a state of allowance with discernment, you have to
Yeah,
have some
yeah,
discernment that the suffering just goes away. Like pain and suffering, that is just resistance to love.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just resistance to love.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's awesome. I wish I had that experience. I've had a couple of moments, but not days like that. Maybe that's a good thing.
It was pretty intense. I'm glad that I had it, but I don't want to repeat it. I'd rather just um, become and remember and yeah, I rather be that love instead of, here instead of trying to find it outside of myself.
Yeah. Isn't that what Rumi went through? Where he was, the
I
dervish
think
dancing.
so. Yeah, Rumi has been quite an inspiration for me as well. He has helped me heal from that experience because it was so intense and like just so it was as if someone had died when I experienced the separation again, the illusion of separation again. And so he helped me reconnect. And I love Rumi. Yeah, he's amazing. He knows
Yeah.
he knows what it feels like to be connected and still be able to function.
Well, I mean, even find a way to keep himself connected because I'm sure the dance in itself is also maybe a spiral. So they're not just turning in one place, they're actually turning and walking. So I'm sure
Yes.
that also represents some kind of sacred geometry or something.
Absolutely, yeah. The whirling dervishes, yeah. They get into that trance state. It's like calibration that happens when they are able to physically and inside the brain too, like the cerebral spinal fluid and everything in our inner ear and all of that, it will put you into an altered state when you do that dance
Yeah.
because it is sacred geometry. And yeah, you can get it through whirling, you can get it through breath work, like holotropic breath work, through meditation, visualization exercises, through psychedelics, but you have to have a guide or know what you're doing. You could actually create psychosis.
I
It's very,
believe that.
very powerful. Yeah, in fact, right now I don't recommend psychedelics anymore unless you are um, like having a hard time functioning. Like I see it's I've seen it save lives. Psychedelics save lives, but I also see it as like training wheels. You don't need them, and if you continue to use them, it's like a crutch, and you're
Yeah.
actually holding yourself back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's good for people that have I know it's good for depression or people that are suicidal or having high anxiety even.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
because it can trigger memories that you may or may not be prepared for.
exactly. Yeah, it can bring up too much trauma to process at the same time, too
Yeah.
much emotions. And, it's good, but I've like right now, the work that I do, I can help people get there instead of like, psychedelics are like riding a roller coaster. And I prefer to get you there, through meditation and hypnosis, which is more like a sailboat. You'll still get there, but it won't be as
Sounds
traumatic.
way, way more peaceful.
Yes.
And also, I think you're more in control because the psychedelics, you have no control. They take over.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
So
can
where
be
can
good
people,
and bad.
yeah.
If you're in your
Yeah.
own way, it can be good, but
No, I
yeah.
find that a little bit too extreme. I did ayahuasca once, and that was insane. It was insane.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I've done ayahuasca twice. The first time was amazing. The second time it was just way too intense and kind of like fried my circuits. It took a while to integrate, to recover from it physically.
Yeah.
I felt it actually caused a Kundalini awakening,
Wow.
if you're familiar
Yeah,
with
you see,
that.
that is intense.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt
But
like I
also, if you're
was
not ready for
functioning.
it, if your body's not ready, because I know that with Kundalini, you need it, it must happen when you're ready. If you do it too soon, it can actually cause problems in your system.
Exactly. It can be deadly. It can be. So either mentally or physically. And so for me, it was like, okay, usually the energy flowing through our nervous system, I would liken it to like a garden hose. But after a Kundalini awakening, it was like a fire hose. Like
Oh,
imagine trying to control a fire hose. One person, it's like too hard. It's unruly. And it's also like if you're usually on 110, electricity 110, and you all of a sudden go to 220, you'll fry out. You will. Like
yeah,
it's happened to me. I used to have a curling iron and then I thought it was 110, but I was plugging into 220 and it fried, it burnt my hair. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, this it's what happens. You can't
yeah,
capacitate that unless you gradually learn to do so. And so when you do it naturally, it's not as dangerous. But when you use psychedelics, it can be painful and dangerous.
yeah, yeah, I agree with you. So where
Mhm.
can people get hold of you?
So you can reach me through my website, ascendwithana.com, and or my email address, which is elmore.ana@gmail.com. And
Awesome. Well,
I'm
I'll post
happy
it in
to
the
answer
links below.
questions. Sure.
Yeah. So one more thing. What message do you have for our viewers? What do you want to leave with?
Well, don't take anything so seriously. Don't take anything so personally. Um, Remember, we are here to play in the mud. That's what we're here for. We're just pretending to be mortal, and 100% heaven on earth is God's plan. It's happening. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And it's so hard not to be serious. I mean, to be not serious, but yet, like the game of golf,
Mhm.
it's just a game. At the end of the day, sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're not. Yeah,
Keep coming back to the present moment. Just keep coming back to the present moment. Don't worry so much about the future. It can be a distraction. It can be entertaining, which is okay, but just keep coming back to the present moment.
that's where the power lies. Absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
that's where everything is. Everything is now.
yeah.
Yeah. And we're
Awesome.
not
Well, thank you.
alone. We're never alone. Never. We're always supported and we are loved more than we can possibly imagine. We are worthy because we exist.
Yeah, that's a lot more messages. I'll put them all in.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. I
You're
know it
very
was a
welcome.
pleasure. I really enjoyed sharing and learning with you. Yeah, you have an awesome day, and I hope
Thank
to speak to you
you.
soon.
You too,
Yeah,
Natasha. It's been my
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.